You're listening to Whoosh Radio. Whoosh Radio.
Your real talk radio.
Daganan kilo bejaning kom lo moham. Lo. Di bejamaso sanalom. Lo. Muasa benge kaputo.
State Affairs.
State Affairs with Edmund Obilo.
The program is State Affairs. I am Edmund Obilo. We are looking at the ongoing protest in the United States of America against racism and state violence. Our intention is to use it to reflect on the general condition of the African in global affairs. Aisha Osori, it's good to have you on State Affairs.
Thank you, Edmund. I'm glad to be here.
Aisha is the Executive Director of the Board of the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, an organization that promotes democratic values. She is a former head of the Nigerian Women's Trust Fund. Aisha's book is interesting. Aisha, how did your book explain the adverse effect of bad politics on the development of the African?
I think for me, the key thing that I learned from my experience contesting the primaries in 2014, the key thing that I learned that we can use as a connection to what's happening to African Americans in America right now, and indeed what's happening to Africans on our own continent, is that leadership matters. Leadership is what dictates what governance and policies are going to be about. And for many of our African countries, the political process, the electoral process, does not allow us to harvest the type of leadership that we need, that's required to develop the continent. So in terms of thinking about what's going on today, and I think George Floyd was just laid to rest, I found myself thinking over and over again, where on this earth can Black people just be free? But even here at home, as I stare at the horror of what the police are doing, not just to the people they've killed, but even to just peaceful protesters, I find that I'm actually looking at a mirror. Because when you come down to Nigeria, we've been trending the End SARS hashtag for almost 2 years. And SARS is still as brutal and as unyielding as ever. And we've not had any serious response from our government.
Also on this part of State Affairs is Yejide Oromila. She is the president of the African National Women's Organization, ANWO, United States of America. Yejide's organization is comprised of African women who recognize their responsibility to organize with each other across borders. Yejide Oromila, it's good to have you on State Affairs.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Edmund.
And there's something interesting about you. In your attempt to express your African identity, you took a Nigerian name, Yejide Oromila. What's in a name?
Well, I didn't necessarily choose a Nigerian name. I chose an African name. And it's important for me because also in the bio, you didn't read it, but I identify as an African person. In my family, I was born here in the United States. My family, mother and my father were born in the Caribbean, but we are Africans that were displaced because of the attack on Africa. So I'm an African. And it was important to me to really have a name that when people heard it, there was no doubt about it. I mean, obviously, it's clear, but I wanted to lead with that name because that's really important to me.
Can you breathe?
I can breathe. I can breathe because I'm in part of international organizing for African people. I see a future for Africa and African people because of that organizing. We believe in the African Revolution, and that revolution is the only solution for African people. And that it's not going to be an American revolution, it's not going to be a Nigerian revolution, it's not going to be a South African revolution, but that we have to organize ourselves everywhere that African people are toward that end. Because like Sister Aisha was just saying, that the question of governance and state affairs and all of that is really rooted in the whole question of colonialism. Colonialism that has not gone away because we never fought it. Colonialism that still exists, neo-colonialism, white power and blackface, that continues to exploit us, loot us, and take all of our resources for just a small minority of the population. And in the meantime, the masses of African people are suffering all over the world. So I can breathe because I have a vision, and I'm a part of an organization that has a vision for our future and are working toward that every single day. But I recognize that the masses of our people are not engaged in that sort of ongoing struggle. But what we're seeing today, more than ever, is African people ready and willing to take it to the streets and really demand to take it back, to take every single thing back.
You just talked about taking it back, and that reminds me of Jaye Gaskia. Jaye Gaskia, good to have you on State Affairs.
Thank you for having me. Good day.
Jaye Gaskia is the National Coordinator of Protest to Power Movement and Coordinating Director of Praxis Center. He is the chair of the National Steering Committee of the Partnership Against Violent Extremism. Yejide Orumila just talked about taking it back, and Jaye Gaskia is about taking it back. What are you taking back?
Indeed, what are we taking back? Taking back our country, but more importantly, actually taking back our humanity. Because, I mean, the basic thing that ran through Yejide's comment is about, and Aisha previously before Yejide, is about the basic humanity of people. The fact that people no longer see themselves as human beings because they are not being treated as human beings, because they are living under subhuman conditions and the rest of that. And so that's the basic thing, really. It's about reclaiming that humanity and taking and asserting that that fact that you are human. If we do not ourselves take conscious steps, and these steps are going to be intellectual, they are going to be practical steps, they are going to be developmental, and all of that. If we do not take these practical steps, to reclaim our humanity, it is not likely that the black person, the person of color, anywhere in the world is going to be respected until and unless we decolonize, and until and unless we actually make a success of a country, of a nation, of a continent, of people of color, then those whose actions and activities, combine to put people of color down are not likely going to be in the position to, to respect people of color.
Dr. Rotifa is part of the discussion. He's a United States resident. He had a long career in the banking industry in Nigeria before migrating to the United States about 20 years ago. Mr. Rotifa, did you experience culture shock on your first arrival in the United States?
First of all, thanks for having me, Edmund, and the opportunity to interface with these great minds. Probably meeting for the first time, but going through their resume and the contribution so far, I know I'm probably be learning from them. So I'm so glad you invited me. Yes, almost every immigrant, whether you're going to United States, whether you're going to anywhere in Europe, I think it's given that you experience cultural shock. Especially if you have been able to do one or two things back home, and suddenly you find yourself, I tell people, having to always start all over again. And some of it will be like, really? and getting to know, we come to America, we come to Europe with mindset of either what to expect or the ways of life there, or how easy things gonna be, or maybe instant turnaround for you. And then you start to see, really? Oh, yes. And then you start to hear stories of people who have been there, and they're telling you realities on ground that, yeah, that's how it is. Yeah, you need to get past this. Or maybe you're trying to cherry pick what you want to do, and they're telling you, oh, no, you can't do that. So, and then coming to meet with people, your host, so to say, and you start to experience the way you are perceived, the way you are treated, and then the constant question, where are you from, and all those things, and they find it so hard to even accept you, and so you're looking at yourself like, am I better off coming here at all? But we continue to weather the storm, and here we are.
Are you telling me that when you go to America, you discovered that your skin color is an issue?
Let me put it this way. Having been here for 20 years and being a naturalized American, and I still get questions like, where are you from? And sometimes you tease them and say, I'm from America. I live in California for like 17 years, and I would say I'm from California. And then that's kind of strange to them. Like you say you're from California with your accent, you must be from somewhere
you must
outside
be an
United
African.
States. You can actually be regarded as one of us. So, and to drive it home, like, what is really the difference?
Let me go to Dr. Lam additional, because we'll have a roundtable talk here, and you will come to that difference. Dr. Ayobami Lam additional, it's good to have you on State Affairs.
Thank you, Edmund.
How is the United Kingdom today?
It's fine, actually. We've had COVID-19, as we've got it all over the world, and we are still more or less like trying to get us ahead and our heads around the recovery, the restoration and recovery aspect of things, most especially because I work for the National Health Service here, and our job is to manage all the hospitals, most especially in the southeastern part of the United Kingdom of England. So the answer to your question is, we've gone through the most difficult part of COVID-19. We are now moving to a kind of restoration and recovery stage of all the healthcare services that we have either paused, or we have cancelled, or we have slowed down over the last couple of weeks or months, so that things can start getting back to normal as from next week, Monday. So that's how the United Kingdom is.
You are a son of a former governor of your state, so you know politics, and you are a politician. You know what is going on about leadership around here. But before we come to the question of leadership, how is the black person seen in the UK?
Well, I mean, if I just use myself as an example, I mean, I came to the United Kingdom a couple of years ago after I finished my first degree at what used to be a University of Ife. They call it Obafemi Awolowo University. So, and I finished my youth service in Nigeria, and I came here. My experience is a little bit different. I was very, very focused in terms of I want to be successful here in the United Kingdom, and I know that there is racial discrimination here, but I was very, very focused that I want to be able to transcend racial discrimination. So I didn't, while I know deep inside me that there is, I made sure that I pretended as if there wasn't. So I went to the university, I took a master's degree, I took a doctorate degree. Before I left the university, I started working for the National Health Service. And over the years, I've applied for jobs. There are certain times I will have applied for a job when it will become quite clear
that probably I was the best for that job, that I won't get the job. But I didn't lose hope. I kept on tapping away. And at the end of the day, I became a director in the National Health Service before I came back to I went back to Nigeria in 2013 after my father has passed away. Joined politics. I contested the primaries to be, for the governorship of my state, and I can see where Aisha is coming from some of the things that she described earlier on, and I decided to come back to find a job here. So I came back to the United Kingdom. Of course, it's not going to be very easy for me to just get a director's job again when I came back into the National Health Service. So about 4 years ago, I started working my way back to the top.
The point you're making is that your skin color did not stop your advancement within the UK system.
That's exactly. That does not mean that there is no discrimination, because if I have to go for a lorry load of interviews before I get the next job and the next job.
And you interpret that as discrimination.
Yeah, because there has been times when I've had a call from the HR director who said to me, I disagreed with what the panel said because I think that you are the best for the job.
What is being witnessed today is deep-seated anger over police killings of Black Americans. And this follows the high-profile cases of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, Eric Garner in New York, and others. Particularly Garner was placed in a police chokehold in New York in 2014, and he was heard crying out, "I can't breathe," as officers restrained him. Recently, George Floyd, in his final moment, said he could not breathe. What is it about breathing? Aisha Osori.
When life is being choked out of you or your breath is being taken away, then of course you will struggle and you say you cannot breathe. But I think more metaphorically speaking, it's just the yoke, the heaviness, the burden of racism, the burden of race that thinks that it's superior. And then for us, more closer to home, the burden that's cutting off our air. I remember that there was a president whose campaign was a breath of fresh air. So you can see that air is quite important. And so for me, it's more metaphorical. And so here in Nigeria or on the continent, you would say that the burden is not really one of racism per se, but as Ejide said, it's still rooted in colonialism and oppression and exploitation and extraction, which is what most of our states are designed to do. The model which prevents us from being, from breathing, from being free, from being able to move around and express our rights for association, to live a productive life, to be happy. In Nigeria, over the last week, rape has been trending. Rape and murder has been trending. There has been nothing significant said about the issue from anybody, not from the president, not from the state governors where these acts are being held. So there's a connection, as I said in my opening remark, about leadership. We don't have the right leadership on the continent right now. We don't have the right leadership in Nigeria. We don't have the right leadership in the United States of America. And there are many other countries. I could mention Turkey. So all around the world, I think we're going to find citizens who are struggling to breathe. We're going to find citizens who are struggling to be free, who want to overthrow the burden of inequality and oppression that's sort of stifling everybody. And for me, this is where we talk about organizing and what needs to be done, what citizens can do. But before you get to that point, you now have to talk about how united citizens are. And so in places like Nigeria, we've used religion and ethnicity to divide ourselves for decades. In places like America, you'd like to think that the Black communities will come together. And I lived in New York for a couple of years, so I know what I'm talking about. You'd like to think that the Black and brown communities will come together. But what Dakwa was talking about his accent, about the hostility that probably comes not just from whites, but also, unfortunately, from African Americans and maybe even Latinos who say you don't belong, when the truth is we all belong and we're all suffering under the same oppressive system and should come together and work together to lift this oppression so that we can breathe.
Yetunde, did you hear Aisha there?
Yeah, Jide.
Yes, Edmund, I did hear her. And I just think that
African people are suffering from colonialism everywhere, even in the United States. Our fight is not about getting the white power structure to like us. I mean, because they use racism as the ideological underpinning of capitalism anyway. That's the justification for why they're able to erect these courts and these systems. It was in America particularly, it was the reason why they had they formed like chain gangs and police violence and police brigades, and all of the carceral state in the United States is based on keeping Black people oppressed, especially after slavery. So every court system that we're in, every judge that we see, everything that's rooted in the American justice system is as a result of that colonialism that still is impacting us today. Half of the men who are in jail are Black men. There's a rising increase in Black women who are going to jail as well. And that's in a country where Black people represent only 13% of the population, but nearly half of all people who are in prison. Now, when we talk about even the children, poor Black children and Black mothers have their children taken at higher rates because of their poverty and because of the whole question of colonialism. Like, we don't have power anywhere in the world. We don't have leadership of the class, of the working class, who actually are the ones who are feeling the brunt of it. And it's not a question of whether or not we want the system at large to like us or accept us, that we have to be talking about building an entire system. We have to destroy that old stuff because it don't work for us.
So what can you say about Black Lives Matter movement? Is that movement capable of redeeming the Black man?
That movement is a movement that we've seen in the last few years that builds up individuals and organizations to work within the system, to lead African people away from resistance and lead them into a place where we are working within the system to try to get some gain. And as we've seen, Black people in America are in a better place, in a so-called better place than we were 500 years ago, economically, politically, and all of that. But it still hasn't changed the colonial condition. So Black Lives Matter isn't about really overturning the system. And I know there are different groups of Black Lives Matter who have different positions. But, what we need to be focused on is building an African revolution. I mean, because that focuses on ending colonialism, overturning the capitalist state, ending the culture, the exploitation and oppression of our people. Because if we don't focus on these things, we're going to continue to deal with the same thing over and over and over again.
Jay Gaskia, you just heard UGD talk about the African Revolution.
Let me situate this within the context of, I'm going to borrow two things from Aisha and UGD. So the first is the concept of choking, of I can't breathe, and that choking and burden. The way the system is structured right now and is organized right now is the reason and the basis of our being choked, of the burden on us. If it's the reason why we are how we are now, then it stands to reason that system needs to be supplanted by a different system, a fundamentally different system. And that's the concept of revolution. Now, the question now is that you get this revolution done, you need to organize, you need to mobilize. Aisha talked about unity. We need to build unity. And I will go back to the current expression of that movement in the United States that is also gaining a global solidarity attention at the moment, which is the current crisis and the current protest movement in the US. If you look at the way that this protest is unfolding and you compare it with the Los Angeles riots of the early 90s and the previous one, you are beginning to see that the work of organizing that has been done in between the civil rights movement of the 60s and now is really beginning to pay off. You are beginning to see a greater unity and a greater diversity of movements. You are seeing on the streets, this is not a black thing. The movement is no longer a black thing, even though the question is a question of the oppression of the people of color. But it's no longer a black movement. You are seeing people on the street. You are seeing Latinos on the street. You are seeing, white Aryan people on the street. We take the action that is possible to take now. In the course of that, we built greater consciousness, a larger movement, and we are able to take larger and bigger action as we move on. And I said that the current crisis demonstrates that very clearly.
And what we can take away from the protest is that the ongoing unrest is the most widespread racial turbulence the United States has experienced since Dr. King was gunned down by a sniper in 1968.
The most diverse.
Dr. Lam Adesina, what does this tell you?
It seems to me that we haven't learned from the lessons of the past, really. But then when I sort of reflect on some of these things and try to put it into context, and it's going to be quite interesting, well, maybe not for today, what Yejide's view is on this. Because just about 3 or 4 years ago, we had an ethnic minority president of the United States for 8 years. And I thought having an ethnic minority president for the United States for 8 years is a turning point. But the recent events that we've got in the United States right now, with respect to George Floyd, it's demonstrated to me that irrespective of having had that president, the issue of racial intolerance within the United States is still deep-rooted.
Perhaps Yejide should come in this time and respond to you.
Obama didn't represent a future for black people or anybody. As a matter of fact, while he was in office, he basically ignored African population in the United States. He ignored the issues and even told us that we needed to pull up our pants and told us that we needed to do all these things to fit into the white power structure of the United States. And even went to Africa and did the same thing. Also, his policies weren't, the most deportations of people out of the United States under his leadership. And, Mike Brown happened when he was in office as well. And so this question of whether or not we see progress because a black person is leadership can also be related to the continent of Africa, where there's all black leaders, and the people are still not benefiting from that. So I don't think that we should look at the United States as something different from that. So Obama was nothing but a figurehead, white power, blackface, and as we well know, on the continent of Africa, that's nothing new.
Dr. Rotifa is an Obama man.
How did Obama become U.S. president? It's not about color of his skin per se. It's more about dynamism of American voters. There was crisis during second Bush era, and the Democrat crashed on that. So, first of all, let's give credit to American voters about something. And it's always about, in this election, what is the need for me? And I think this is one of the things I always preach to my Nigerian readers, that what is in this election, what is the need for me, for my finance, for my family, for my progress? What is the need personally for me? I think American voters do better when it comes to that. The Republican mess up during Bush era with the meltdown, and then Obama came with a message of change.
She said, white power, blackface. White power, blackface.
Obama would not have been president without white votes. There's no way to win with only black votes or minority votes. It's not possible.
I think the point she was making there, though he was a black man at the helms, but the power resided with the whites.
I do not agree with that. Obama has his own worldview. He has a view of what he wants America, the kind of America he wants to see. When he became president, yes, you can accuse him of not seeing or maybe not helping his black constituency more, but he saw himself as American president. And I think I'm not going to subscribe to the idea that he didn't do anything for us. Actually, he did.
State Affairs with Edmund Obilo is live. Stay tuned. Bush Radio. Oh, wow.